A dual live today. We're doing a live broadcast on Elevate Hair Instagram, and we're also doing a live broadcast on Facebook with our parent company, Neal Corporation. Amber, my wife, is behind the camera today. We're still observing the social distancing. We've been social distancing together now for a couple weeks, so we're okay to be in proximity with each other. Did you get the Facebook up for Neal?
Yes, I did.
Awesome, cool. All right, let me just make sure I can see that real quick. And, whatever. All right, so here we go. So today is Monday, Mullet Monday, and I thought it'd be fun to show you guys a live mullet and start off with my mannequin. She's uncut, and I wanted to kind of walk with you through the sections I have, right? So I've got this first section, which is a fringe section, and I based this section off of the apex of her head. So I just kind of take the comb here, and there's a space here where the comb comes off, and that's essentially the apex of the fringe. So everything below that point is going to fall forward. Everything above that point is going to fall to the left or to the right. So I've isolated that area. Here's my fringe area. I'm going to start here. If we look on the sides here, I've got a section here, 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 and a mirror on the other side. So let me go ahead and just re-clip that up and just fit all of me moving it. And so the idea is that I want to focus in the front and execute the front, and then I'll move to the back. I want to isolate those areas. So let's just start off right in the front. Now, on a real live human, this section is not going to be quite as dense as it is on a mannequin. On a mannequin, you can see they really punch in the hair. So I'm actually going to take a little bit of an extra step. Might not be necessary at home if you're cutting on a real person. But if you do have a mannequin, it might be necessary. And you can see them just kind of perpendicular to that section right there. So first things first, the fringe, my favorite part. Now this is a part of most haircuts where I feel like hairdressers kind of do themselves a disservice in that they do the fringe last. I really believe that the fringe is the most important part on the haircut because the client sees that first, right? So whenever I'm doing a fringe, especially if it's a new thing, a new look for the client, I actually want to do that right away so I can make sure that I've executed that perfectly. We can hold this up. You can see this is the hair that I've left on the head, and I'm going on the hair at sort of at an angle, so I'm catching the edge. So you're not going to see a lot of texture in this first section because it's the foundation for the haircut. So I want it to actually be more blunt. You're not going to see the kind of dramatic or more aggressive razor mechanics here. And I'll do that essentially anywhere around the perimeter of the haircut, which the fringe is the perimeter of the haircut as well. Now that I've got that sort of dense area section, I'm going to use it for my guide, using the fine teeth of the comb, back of the blade, and I'm going to start moving through the hair before I do anything else. I want to cut air before I cut hair, right? And that's going to give me a bit more of a consistent mechanic and a consistent line. If I just go into the hair and cut it without moving it first, I have more of an inclination or more of a tendency to put a hole or a step in the cut. I'm just going to clean her face off. Obviously, she's got those mannequin bangs that's going to pop up, but you can see just kind of naturally where it's falling. And I'm cool with that area. Next, I've got the foundation in there. I've got my line. I'm going to start to work in the rest of her fringe. I use the wide teeth of the comb, and these nice little YS Park combs we have on Elevate Hair. They've got a little bit of a step here, a little bit of a gap, and that allows for nice sectioning. I'm a huge proponent of great combs. Cutting hair, a lot of people think about the scissors and the razor and those being the most important steps, right? And I get that, right? So if you're doing a haircut, the scissors are really doing the work, right? They're cutting the hair, right? Boom, boom, boom. Or if you're going with the razor's cutting the hair, right? But how does the hair get there? So I'm a really big believer, and it's not necessarily the scissor or the comb where the execution happens. It's in how you comb the hair to your place, right? The teeth of these comb are very fine, and it gives me a nice consistent look. I don't want to use a wide tooth of the comb, right? Because it creates all these steps. You can see these little steps in here. Can you see that, Amber? Mm-hmm. Right, so the fine teeth kind of like flattens the hair out, and it gives me almost like I kind of imagine it like a piece of paper, right? Nice and smooth. This is out of my fingers. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to start to move, and then I can create texture moving with the flat pieces of hair. And that gives me more consistency. If I use the wide teeth or I have inconsistent comb, then I can get inconsistent razoring. One thing that's
Ira.
Yeah. Is Ira there?
Yeah.
Hi, Ira. So one thing I'm doing here with the comb, and it's a bit confusing because my fingers are following, right? So the comb is actually applying all the tension, and my fingers just grab at the very end. So all the tension is essentially generated from my comb. Then I grab, and then I start cutting. Ira and I have a Facebook Live. If you guys dig through the Hairbrain library we did last year before EDC, that was pretty cool, a little tag team Facebook Live. And you can see what's left in my hair. So at this point of the hair, the fringe, I've been a bit more on edge, and I've been trying to create a little bit more strength in my line. So I'm not opening up my razor a ton. Once I get past this area here, you're gonna see me work a little bit more vigorously with my razor, and that's gonna create more texture. A bit of a weird thing about the mannequin is you might see my sections get a little bit thicker as I move up. Because it's mannequin hair, it's evenly distributed hair throughout, but at the front it's thicker because of the punching. So unlike a real human where the hairline's the finest and the interior of the hair is the thickest, it's a mannequin, it's the opposite. You might have just noticed a noise. We're in New Orleans right now, and the streetcar is still running. It's right outside, and so every once in a while you will hear what sounds like a train coming through. That is the streetcar. I forgot to mention that the last time we did a live, and for some of you, you might have been wondering what that noise was. This little bit of hair, I've lost control, it's out of my reach, so I'm just gonna grab from the center, cutting with the back. Anytime I'm going from the center out, I wanna cut from the back of the blade. And that's just to protect my client, right? So if I'm cutting with this part of the blade here, then her face is out of the way. If I'm cutting here, then I've got this back of the blade that could possibly ding her on the nose. And this is an unguarded razor, so we don't want to do that. We don't want to be doing any red color that we didn't anticipate in the consultation. Pull this hair away, make sure I've got nice even tension with my fingers, applied by the comb. And you can see I'm starting to be a little bit more aggressive with my razoring, and I'm starting to use a little bit more of the flat. So I'm not just coming across on the edge, I'm actually somewhat starting to peel. And if you look at the difference in the texture here, can you see that, Amber? See, it's a little bit more diffused than when we started off. It's a little bit more texture, and that comes because I'm not just on the angle, I'm actually somewhat on the flat, and it's giving me a little bit of variation in the texture. Last little bit here, and again, back of the blade on this side of the face. Now I'll come to this side, and now I switch. It's the opposite, right? So now I'm in the center going right. I'm gonna use the front of the blade, right? If I use the back, then the front of the blade, again, is close to her face and is dangerous. I'm gonna do a little bit of demonstration on how you guys can practice at home if you haven't been using a razor like this, and how you can keep yourself and your clients safe and protected when you're using a razor. Again, using the flat and the edge, boom, nice. So what I like to do, you guys want to check it out, I always grab my razor with these 3 fingers, never my index finger, right? My index finger kind of locks this away, and this allows for me to manipulate my comb, and it also creates a nice habit and discipline in keeping this finger away from the comb. Look at the difference. I put the comb down, boom. Look how much closer and loose it is. So if I'm sectioning like this, I could really run into trouble. I can hurt someone or myself. So I like to keep this back, and this index finger never touches the comb, and then I can section and do all the things that hairdressers do without worrying about hurting anyone. right? So you can see how much further that comb is away versus here, right? So again, if you're trying to hold this at home, for my barbers, look, my barbers, they're razoring people like this with these fingers, way out here. It's different, even though it's a barbering tool, it's not the same. It goes back further in between these two fingers. And this thumb actually sits on the side. It doesn't go underneath. A lot of people think that this is the motion. That's not the motion. It's up and down, very much like you're signing your autograph, very similar. Just imagine that your name is MW, right? So up, down, MW, MW. And that's how you do basic razoring. Last little section, you saw how my razor mechanics were getting a little bit more vigorous and open. So I'm going to continue on that trend. It's really important when you're using a razor to kind of keep in a steady rhythm. Rhythm really dictates the feel and the effect of the razor. And I don't mean like esoterically feel, I mean literally how it feels. So it's important that you're doing that in a very similar way. Very, very open. And then you can see the difference in texture here. On the edge, on the flat, not on the edge. Boom. All right, so now we have the foundation for our mullet. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to go into the back of to the sides of the hair. And what I've done for you guys is I've split this, these side panels into two separate panels. Right? This is important and will relate to what's happening in the front, but I really want to isolate this for a couple reasons. One, it's a mannequin head, so don't have a lot of clearance here. This will vary from person to person how much space you have here. But really, it's this ear that matters, right? So what's in front of the ear, what's behind the ear really is going to dictate what the mullet looks like, right? So for a lot of times, if I'm doing a shag, I might want to keep this section here long. I might want to have length like this. But for a mullet, I actually want to bring this up. So regardless if I'm doing a mullet or I'm doing a shag, I tend to use these types of sections to show me.
We have a question. Do you band your fingers on the left hand side?
Do I band my fingers on the left hand side?
On the left hand. Do you band your fingers on the left hand?
Band. I don't know what that means actually.
Hand.
Do I band my fingers on the left side?
On the left hand.
Do you think that's bend? Sorry, whoever asked that question, re-explain your question. I'd love to answer it. Was that from Instagram or for?
Instagram.
Okay. Okay, now I want to this section. I want to use my fringe as a guide.
I think they meant bend. To get more texture.
No, it's different than on a scissor where I might kind of bend my fingers to kind of fan open the hair and tip in. All of my texture comes from the razor and how I move it through the hair. So I really want the hair to look like this. I want it to be totally flat with no notches. So I don't want it to look like this. You can see I've got all those notches in there. I want it to look just like this, as flat as it can be, like a piece of paper. And then I use the razor to dictate the texture, right? So again, our mannequin's really thick here. I'm gonna step this back. I'm gonna do what I like to call a beauty mullet, because there's a lot of people who want a shag and maybe kind of a mullet vibe, but they're maybe not into something that's too aggressive. So I've kind of coined this the beauty mullet because it is done with a little bit more, there's a little bit more conservative kind of vibes going on, but it still has a mullet, right? So I'm moving my razor and then I'm starting to press in. This is the baseline, so you're not gonna see me be on the edge. Next little section, and then I go down. And I'll use this as my guide for the other section. So I'll make sure that I'm balanced on both sides before I get started. Now that I've got that going, I'll take another little fine section. Again, I'm just working with this hairline here because it's weird. It's a mannequin hairline, so somewhat of an unnatural section. And what I'm doing right here in this moment is I am connecting the dots, right? So there's the length, there's my guide, that's how long I want it to be. I would discuss that with the client before. And now I'm connecting the dots. This thing has a nice flow in itself. Cool, now that I've got the guide and the foundation, I'm gonna start to move through this section a little bit more vigorously and a little bit more openness with my razor. Back of the blade, moving my tool, moving the razor nice. I'm starting to create more and more texture. And there is a line, there is a semblance of a line, and that's one of the reasons I like cutting with the razor. You get both texture and line at the same time. Next section. I originally planned for this Mullet Monday to do Amber's hair, but we needed someone to film. So we'll have to do her haircut offline. While we film this. All right, again, lots of movement, lots of texture in this space. And now I essentially just want to assess what we have. Okay, on to the next section here. I'm going to dampen the hair down a little bit. It's really important to have nice, even dampness when you're working with the razor. I said this last time if you guys were around, but it's in my firm belief that razors do not damage hair, that hairdressers damage hair. One of the reasons that hairdressers tend to damage hair is that they're more often than not thinking about the quality of their razors and how sharp they are. So a razor is a really sharp tool for about one haircut, and then it's not anymore. So when you're cutting with the razor, I like to think about it like this. One razor per haircut. So every time I change out a client, I have a new client, I have a new blade that I'm using. Also, the hair being evenly damp. I can't stress to you how much that makes a huge difference. Dry hair, dull razors, they'll definitely do some damage. So you want to have damp hair and fresh razors. What I'm doing right now, I'll show you guys this. I'm checking for balance, right? I'm planning for balance, right? So I'm grabbing this hair and pulling it down. It's hitting right around her jawline. And so I'm gonna plan to hit right around her jawline with the end of this look, this section right here. Holding down, that's where I wanna end up. And I'm just kind of moving that down to that point. And now I will check to make sure that we are balanced. And we are pretty balanced, perfect. I like to be a little bit longer or perfectly balanced whenever I do that. I feel like if it's a little long, then I can fix a little long, I can't fix a little short. So I kind of plan to be a little bit longer on one side or just nail it, and that keeps me from having to go back and cut the other side. Next section. And I can see my guide through the hair. You can see that right there. There's my guide. One more section. I'm going to encapsulate all the hairline at this point. I'm going to connect the dots just like I did on the other side. Let me take that section again for you. Clean sections really make a huge difference when you're cutting with the razor. Because your razor typically will vary in openness and texture, it's important to be balanced on both sides. A lot of times clients will come in if they've had a razor cut and they'll say it just feels funny, right? So one side is balanced from a length perspective, but maybe if you were more open on one side versus the other, it's gonna feel differently when their hands are in their hair. So I try to keep it balanced at all times, and I try to make sure that I'm working the same type of rhythm and mechanic on the left side of the head as the right side of the head. Okay, so here's my hairline from the bang, and I just connect the dots, right? So there's the length, there's the existing length, go in front of the blade, and I'm just gonna take that away in a very closed kind of way. So I've got that balance there, perfect. So now we're all connected. Next section. Boom. Those of you who are just tuning in, we are doing a mullet because it's Mullet Monday, and why not? So I'm just kind of going over how I approach a mullet and how I approach it with a razor. Next section. Boom. There we go. Pulling that out. Oh, it's a little thick. I'm going to take a little bit of hair out of there. With the razor, it's kind of, sections vary in density based on what you're trying to do. So I need to see my guide. So if I have too much hair and I can't see that guide, it doesn't make sense. And if I have too little hair, you know, if it's like cutting down here, it's not enough hair to really create any texture. It's cutting individual hairs. So it's sort of about having a medium thickness of hair. You just want to be able to see your guide from underneath, and that's kind of how you base it. On every client, it's going to vary. And boom, last section, and we'll kind of check and see how we did there. More open, and then coming down. All right, let's just have a look and see what we got here. So we got the beginning of a mullet. Let's go. First thing, we'll check for balance. Cool, we're balanced here. And we're getting going good. All right, so now we're gonna move into the sides. You can see the discrepancy in length here. Now, I can do a couple things at this point. I can continue on connecting the dots, taking this length away, or I can drop out this bottom section and try to leave a little bit of length. I'm going to essentially just connect the dots and move through this and make it kind of more of a sort of a mid-length mullet. We're getting some more feedbacks.
People are excited about Mullet Monday.
Yeah, Mullet Monday is the best. I'm glad you guys are tuning in. Mullet Monday's definitely my baby. I've been preaching mullets for a long time, and they've really kind of taken off and are now part of the mainstream, which I'm super excited about. And so why not teach you guys how to do some of my favorite techniques of mullets. Tomorrow, we've got another special presentation. We're going to be doing a Billie Eilish color for you guys. This sort of extended root look, this Billie Eilish color is really, really, really popular. And social media wise, every time we post anything that's got that kind of Billie Eilish color, it blows up the internet. So I want to show you guys how we do it. I've got my friend Savannah from Elevate Color.
I have a question.
That's going to do it for you guys. And that'll be tomorrow. I do want to add too that we have a couple of other things in the pipeline for this week for homeschooled. I'll be back on Wednesday. I'll be back with you tomorrow for the color with Savannah and Elevate Color. And then Wednesday I'll be doing a bob, and then we'll send it to Alberto in Dallas, and he's gonna do another color, and then we're gonna do social media talks on Friday. And we've got a social media class this week with my good friend Andy Eaton. If you guys are interested, go to the Neil page and sign up for it. It's gonna be a special class. And I believe it is tonight. Yes, what's the question?
If you have a guest with a deeper hairline on the sides, would you section farther behind the ear?
Yeah, it just depends. Like I need to separate the front from the back, or at least mentally separate the front from the back, so that I don't cut things that don't need to be cut or leave things that don't need to be there. So if she has a deeper recession, I need to kind of decide, well, what's going to be left, right? So if she doesn't have a lot of hair before the ear, then yes, I will definitely take the hair back, but I might section above the ear here and make sure I don't take the perimeter here. So your section, for that person that asked, might look a little bit more like this initially, right? Where all this here is counting in the mullet, and then you leave this out and that becomes your length. So great question. Always vary whatever you're doing based off the client's hair and the outcome that's gonna happen by cutting it. I really, the mannequins are so specific and unique. It's not entirely like cutting a real head of hair. So, and here we go. So then I've got my nice little, you can see we've got some layers in here, and I've got a little bit of length here. I'll probably end up cutting this off at the end, but you can see this is starting to take place, and this is all the foundation. We haven't cut the top yet. That's our interior, and we'll do a lot of heavy layering in this space. So now all I have to do is connect the dots. So we did this side. I'm just gonna run through and kind of look and see what I did here. It's my sections, right? It's coming straight down, cutting into my guide, progressively getting longer as we go. And now I want to do the same on this side. This is going to look a little bit more extreme than you guys probably are used to cutting in behind the chair. That's okay. The subsections still apply. So this can be much longer. In fact, I did a similar version of this haircut last week, and it was a longer look. So keep the idea of the subsections, and you change the length based off of you and your client's consultation. Nice clean section here. I'm going to step in front of the camera so I can grab that. There you go. You can see me working here. And notice I'm not doing a lot of elevation here. I'm not picking up my hair here. I'm trying to cut the hair sort of where it lives, where it's gonna fall or its natural fall. Comb goes straight in. I use my fingers to follow the comb. I grab with the tension of the comb, back of the blade here. And now I'm just putting in that length and doing a little bit of texture, not too much here. Again, this is the foundation, so you're gonna see me be a little bit more on the edge of the hair in this first section. Cool. I'm gonna check the balance. Good. Next section, kind of like a diagonal back section, so they're not totally horizontal, or vertical rather, slight diagonal. And the hair's gotten a little dry back here, so I'm just gonna go back with my water bottle and dampen the hair. For those of you who are wondering if I did any pre-work on this mannequin, I just did a shampoo and conditioner with Nutriplenish. It's like a new moisturizing product that Aveda came out with, and a little bit of this leave-in conditioner here, just to give it a little bit more slip. And on a real person, I may or may not use that. I typically don't cut with a cutting solution, but on mannequin heads, the hair is just so rough, if you will, that I feel like it needs a little bit of extra condition to help my tools go through it a little bit better, scissor or razor. So I often shampoo and condition my mannequins before with something nice, and then I'll spray a little bit of the leave-in. And that Nutriplenish is actually kind of nice because it's light, but it's effective.
Question. When razoring and you go back to cross-check and notice you have some hair that is too long and not blended, do you go back to point cut with scissors or pinch and cut with the razor?
Yeah, so there's like a little tiny bit of hair that didn't quite make it in the back section. And I will go through and do the same sections and cut it. If it's something like that little piece, I'll show you what she's talking, I think what she's talking about. He is talking about. I'll go back through and I'll kind of grab it with everything and cut it. But sometimes, yeah, I can just grab with my fingers. If there's like something I'm not really happy with, I might just grab it with my fingertips like that and cut it. It just depends on the situation. I do use my scissors as well. The tricky thing about the scissor is, you know, with the razor, it's a motion like this. With the scissor, you've got two blades collapsing, right? So the middle of the hair is going to be just as dense as the ends of the hair, right? It's going to be more blunt. So after all this razoring, if I'm not careful when I go in with the scissor, I can create some bluntness, which is going to make it feel and look a little weird. So I have to be really careful. If I feel like I need to go in with the scissor, it's very minimal at the beginning, and then I might do it at the end when it's dry, because I can create a little bit more texture with the scissor on dry hair than I can with wet hair. But I try to get it just kind of nailed with the razor. It's hard to duplicate the texture of the razor with a scissor. And if I am, I'm going to do that dry. So my guess is you were referring to this little piece here.
We have another question.
I'll pick that up later, yeah.
If you cut the same haircut on a client and they come back to see you in 8 weeks for a trim, would you still be using your razor, or would you use your shears and point cut a trim?
That's a great question. So 2 months is kind of like I could go in with the razor. It just depends on how much of a trim is. You know, if it's this much growth, it's kind of hard to get the razor with that much growth. I might just take out more weight with the razor and then go back through and point cut. But sometimes I vary. So a client comes in, we do a razor cut today. The next time I do a little weight removal with the razor and a little point cutting. And then the third time, maybe I'm going back to the scissor with point cutting. And then on the fourth visit, we go back to the razor. It really just depends on what's happening with the ends of her hair. If I feel like they've gotten too weak, then I'll use a scissor to add strength. If I feel like they're still dense, then I'll use a razor to take weight out. I typically think of the razor that way. What am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to strengthen a shape, or am I trying to texturize and weaken a shape? If I'm trying to texturize, take weight out, and weaken a shape, then I'm going to use a razor. If I'm trying to strengthen, I'm going to use a scissor. So it just depends, but it's pretty common for me to go back and forth between the scissor and the razor on the visits. So now I'm going to do just like a quick little check for length. I'm going to hold the hair out and see where I'm at here, and then check for balance here. A little longer on this side, so I'm going to actually go back through, see if I missed anything. Let's take a little bit more hair off here. Just pick that up a little bit. And I'll check again for balance. And then last section. Cool. Just pick up a couple pieces and we're more balanced. Great. All right, so now we are onto the back of the head, and this is where I'm going to put in the length. And take this down, put in the length, and that very top section we'll save for last, and I'll be the most aggressive with it. Right, so here you can see the discrepancy in the length we've created here, the front of the haircut, versus this. So I'm going to try to just bring this in line with what we have here. I'm just going to do a simple center section, cutting from the center out to create my length. Depending on the hair type, you can do this with either a razor or a scissor. If I wanted to keep it really long, let's imagine that I wanted to try to maintain as much length as possible. This hair down here, it's so fragile and sort of deconstructed already, I don't need to go through with a razor. I would cut that with a scissor. But when I get up here, you can see how there's much more density here. Now I'll go through with the razor. So I'm really looking at the density of the hair that I'm about to cut, and that determines, am I going to use a scissor or a razor? If I'm down here, I need to strengthen the shape, I'm using a scissor. I'm up here, I need to texturize and open up the shape to match what I've done on the side, so I'm going to use the razor. So tilt her head down slightly, center part. Do you have another question?
Yes. How do you approach it if they have a side part or heavy side?
Great question. So if they have a side part and are wanting something shaggy, I'm going to treat each side a little different, right? So if she's over here, let's look at this. If she's parting her hair here, right, and she wants something shaggy, it doesn't do me any good to make this side match this side because it doesn't follow the same way. It's not like a center part. So I might scissor the heavy side first, create a lot of texture there, and then visibly mirror this so it looks like she's got pieces hitting her face in the same area from this piece. But if you take this piece of hair and connect it to this piece of hair, this is going to be a lot longer from the side part. So just to recap, I'm going to do the heavy side first, and then I'm going to try to visually connect the light side, or the side where the part is, to make sure it looks like it's the same, but they'll be different up to this point. Then when you get to the back of the head, then that's when I will try to create balance, right? The back of the head should always be balanced. So I'll kind of separate those layers, and then I'll kind of connect the dots visibly, just either through side cutting or whatever technique, so it looks the same, but it won't be perfectly balanced, because that perfectly balanced side part layer is going to look unbalanced because the layers don't follow the same. Sections are the same. gonna dampen this down one more time. Now I'm gonna cut. Using the back of the blade. This side, front of the blade. Subsection that a little bit.
Does your razor have a guard on it?
Does not have a guard. I do not cut with a guard. And just have always been like that. I've never cut it with a guard. You certainly can cut with a guard. The only thing you can't do is you can't, there's a couple texturizing techniques that you can't do with a guard. In particular, the fact that the front of this blade, there's nothing there. I can take weight out with the tip of this blade, which is really nice. You can get guarded razors that do work, and you can do a lot with them. I find that unguarded gives me more freedom, more fluidity, but I do have some safety measures I try to maintain in how I hold the razor to protect me and my client. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going through, I think someone asked earlier, what do you do if it's not perfect, right? So here's an example of something that's just not perfect. There's a couple hairs that are offline. I just use my scissors to point cut those away. Three of them too. And I try to never do this again. Once I've got the perimeter nice and balanced, then I try to leave that alone. I don't want to touch it too much. But I'm point cutting in a way where I'm slightly tearing the hair. So I go into the hair, and then as I cut, I'm pulling away. So it gives it a slight little tear, certainly nothing to the same level as a razor, but it gives it a little bit more of a torn edge, and that looks a little bit more cohesive with the razor. Next section, again, look how big these sections are. This is just because I'm in a mannequin. If you're on a real person, your sections will be much finer than this. This is typically the thickest part of the head, and on the mannequin, it's like the thinnest, right? So that's a big section in real life. Too big. All right, next section. See my guide, it's very easy to notice it. You guys can see it at home, there it is. Back of the blade, be a little bit more open because I'm already established a perimeter. And then just kind of tear that away. Next section. Just gonna take it all down. Again, this is not normal. On a real person, you wouldn't be able to do this. But you can see just like how little hair there is here. So it doesn't make sense for me to go through the labor of taking tiny tedious sections, which you would need to do on a real human. Just gonna take it all at once because there's not a lot of hair. And again, just to reiterate, it's like if you're cutting individual hairs, you're not creating any texture. You need to have a little bit of hair in there so that there's variation. You know, as the razor comes down, there's different little hairs that get caught on that downstroke. So little bits of variation give texture and also can give what we call razor graduation. And I'll cover that on Wednesday in my class. All right, so now we've got our length, and you can see the overall effect of the mullet. So she's got her length here, and you can see these sections. What we did in the front kind of pushes off the head and gives her some space here. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for space here. And the reason why I call this a beauty mullet is it's got some pieces where she tucks her hair back, she can pull this forward, and everything is based off of her eyes, her cheekbones, and her jawline. Right, so I want this haircut to sort of accent all the pretty features of her. So it's not necessarily an aggressive mullet. It can be, but it's really more around her feeling and looking beautiful while still having this sort of shaggy mullet look. On to the top. Now this is a pretty, you've seen me cut hair before, I do this quite a bit. I'm going to shag this out. I'm gonna tilt her head down. Get this thing around here. Tilt her head down. Oh,
No.
she died. And again, I want her head tilted down because I'm going to do some aggressive layering here at the top. So I want to make sure I'm in a good spot for you. How about this? Does that look good? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take horizontal sections going across. And I'm going to pick straight up. Nice and tight. I'm going to pick straight up and I'm going to start cutting. So this does not relate to the fringe below. It's totally independent of that. So I'm creating a new length, new guide, and I've got a couple options in doing so. One is I can take some of this hair here and cut it, and the other is to just ignore it. So I'm actually going to pick this up here, and I'm going to start putting in a new guide. Going from center to the left, so I'm using the back of the blade, this portion of the blade here. Even though she's not anywhere close, the blade's way off the scalp, I want to keep the habit of doing that. So if I'm cutting from center out, I'm using the front. I'm cutting from center left, I'm using the back. Safety first. How many of you guys cut with an unguarded razor at home? Are you guys cutting with one of these at home? Thumbs up, no?
Nothing.
Okay, that's fine. Next section, I can see my guide. It is underneath. You can see it right there. Pick it up. Lots and lots and lots of texture here. This is the thickest part of the head, right? So I want to try to create as much texture as possible. And one of the tricks to the razor is keeping the angle of the blade the same on both sides. And what does that mean? If I'm pushing this way and using the flat of the blade like this, right? So if I'm pushing from left to right and the blade's like this, then when I'm pushing from center to the right, the blade needs to be like this, so that the angle of the ends of the hair are the same on both sides. And that can be a little tricky. You gotta sometimes contort your body a little bit, but for the most part, cutting with the razor is nice and easy. It's all cutting to your core. It's all cutting to the middle of your chest. So I typically don't have to create a lot of weird body positions. It's all going to the same place. You're seeing my elbow lift up a little bit there, and that's so I can simulate that same angle. And the other thing I can do is, of course, I can just lower my client's head. Sometimes you'll see that the head will be quite low, and that helps me be in the right place without extending my body in a weird way. Once I finish this next section, I should be past that initial subsection, that sort of square shoe that I created. And I will start to pick up some of the hair from the very back of the head that you saw me just put the line in. So this will be next. One more section. And we'll be past that. You guys are just tuning in to Homeschool. My name is Tate O'Neill. Doing a series of education this week with our partner, our parent, Neal Corporation. So we've got a bunch of stuff heading down the pipeline for you guys. We've got a Billie Eilish color tomorrow with me and Elevate Color, Savannah. And then we also, on Wednesday, we'll have me back in here doing a bob with you guys. It should be pretty cool. And then Thursday, we'll be doing some more color with Alberto Davis. And Friday, we'll be doing social media talks. So if you guys are interested in social media, you definitely want to tune in Friday, but also we have some classes that you can get through the Neil education page with one of my good friends, Andy Eaton. She's doing how to brand your page, all the things Instagram. We've got some time on our hands to think about how we want to promote ourselves, how we want to put ourselves out there. So Instagram, if you guys don't know already, is my favorite, I think is the most valuable hairdresser tool in the world. Because you can communicate who you are and who you are as a hairdresser and or any type of visual art, whether that be hair, let's say you're a baker or a landscape architect. What better platform is there to say, hey, look, this is the kind of work I do. Do you want to work with me?
Question.
Yep.
Are you pulling everything forward till you run out of hair to the fringe?
Correct. But I'm not connecting it to the fringe. So I did it. There should be a slight little gap. Here, we'll do a little vertical section so you can see what I just did. So here, there's just like a slight little variation. Here's my fringe here, and there's like a little bit of a gap here. Not too much though.
Another question.
So there you go, there's my length. Shake this out, and then we'll go to the back of the head and see if we want to take any more layers there. Yeah, what's the next question?
In your opinion, what traits throughout a cut and styling determines a modern mullet versus a dated mullet?
A lot of that's going to be the style, and it's also going to be the trajectory of the curve here, right? So if your curve here goes straight back and there's no corner, then it's going to look more like a dated mullet. If you leave a corner in the right spot, then that'll also help keep it look more fresh, right? So either you're leaving a corner here in front of the ear, or you're leaving a corner in the back of the ear. I chose to leave one in the back of the ear for this particular cut. If I wanted to make it look a little more conservative, more like a shag, then I would not have left it. The other thing is then just your extreme disconnection here. And so next Monday we'll do another mullet, and I'll actually show even more extreme disconnection here, so you guys kind of get a visual of that, right? So if this was just gone, right, this wasn't here, then that's going to give you the appearance of a more extreme mullet. And this is why I like this beauty mullet, because I leave all that stuff here. Here's all these pieces, and then for my client, all she has to do is tuck behind the ear, and then she's got a badass, rocker kind of mullet. But if she wants to look a little bit more conservative, she just leaves her hair down and it doesn't have that strong effect. So that's why I call this the beauty mullet, because it's optional for the girls or whoever to be more conservative, be more aggressive. Next week when we do it, we'll actually use clippers, and we'll do something way more extreme, just because we can, because it's fun, because it's Mullet Monday. So it's all about that corner and where you keep it. So now I'm going back to the back of the head, and I'm going to take some more layers. So what I want to make sure I do is separate the front from the back really well. Here's the back of the ear. Go down just a little bit more. Separate that out. Really just to kind of keep things away. If I'm not cutting something, I feel like it's only going to distract me if I see it. So I try to get things that I'm not dealing with out of my way, so I can just focus on what's in front of me.
Do you think the usage of a razor makes it more modern because of all the texture?
The usage of the razor really is more about the density of the hair and what I'm trying to create. I think that you can create more shagginess with someone, more texture with the razor, and that could give it a more modern feel. But for me, I really believe it's just that corner and the placement of the corner, and then the hair density and type will dictate the tool. So I can use a razor on all types of hair. Depends, doesn't really matter to me so much as I'm thinking about what I want to achieve. So if the hair is really curly, but I need to create more space, then I might still want to use a razor, right? So level, 2, 3 hair curl, I'm gonna probably be able to use a razor. When I get into the 4 category, 4 ABC, which is like a very tight curl, sometimes those curls can be a little bit more delicate and fragile, and going through the razor doesn't make sense, right? Am I trying to create more texture, more space? For most cases, I'm not in that scenario, so I would want to use a scissor. So it really just depends on the hair in front of you. You can cut anyone with a razor, depending on their hair type. I just think about, is it weak, is it strong, right? So if I have someone who hasn't been in for a year, and they've got long blonde hair, they've been getting color consistently, but just not hair cutting consistently. I don't know if you have any of those people. She might just want to trim. Well, the bottom of her hair is so fragile and weak already from not cutting it in a year that I don't need to go through with a razor. If I'm doing a trim, I need to go through with a scissor because I need to strengthen that. The inside of her hair, the thickness might dictate a razor, but because the ends are so fragile, I need to strengthen that up. In this situation, I want to use the razor because I'm trying to create a lot of texture, and that's why I brought the length up a little bit, so it made using the razor more practical.
Are you going to pivot, or is it going to be a stationary or traveling guide?
It's going to be, I'm going to basically try to flatten this out. So I'm going to take the length to about right here, and then it's going to travel, right? So the next section will be here, next section will be here. But once I reach this round part of the head, once I reach here, you guys can see that, and this corner, I'm going to start to ever increase my over direction. So I'll basically stop at that point and I'll over direct in this panel. So pretty much traveling guide here based off the center, and then I'll start to over direct progressively to that spot. And that really depends on the hair type, hair shape, right, and head shape. So if it's wider and flatter here, then I might go a little wider. If it's more narrow and rounder here, I might be less wide with my subsection. But good question. So first section, you can see my existing guide. This is a really important point. I've painted myself into a corner a few times before by not catching the apex of the head. So if you're starting this section right here below the apex of the head, it's gonna look real weighty. So I start at the very top, I elevate up and out, and then I'm going to slide to my left. So it's going from short to long. There's my guide. Slide to my length. Next section. Now I'm about to get to that point where I said that I was going to increase my over direction. So now I'm kind of staying stationary. I'm going to pull this closer to me. Next section. Might not be a lot of hair in there. It's definitely not. This is where having a unguarded razor is nice because I'm going through and I'm tipping some of the hair. I'm creating a little bit of weight and space here. Cool. And then now you can see we've got a lot more texture in there, a lot more layers. Now I'm going to go to the other side. Using the back of the blade just out of habit. Obviously there's no face there. I'm just trying to stay in the habit of using, I'm on this side using the back of the blade. Dampen this down. This is my guide. I can see it. I hope you guys can see it now. Now I'm starting to ever increase my over direction to that section. One more section. I'll go through and I'll tip a little bit. Shake it out, see what we've got left. Now what I'll do is just actually check for the whole mullet and see where we're at. Just gonna shake her out here, guys. All right, so now we've got basic shape in there. Now we want to think about detailing. So one thing I'm noticing about her as she's drying is it's starting to look a little too weighty in this area. So I'm going to go back through and see if there's something I can do with the shape to give it a little bit more flatness in that area. So first thing I do is I take it out on a horizontal and I see where we're at. So yeah, I think this could be a little bit shorter here. So I'm gonna follow this through. Same sections we were doing before, but I'm gonna take a little bit more weight out just to flatten the shape. Hold her out. I'm gonna start to tip in. So you can see the line is still there, but some of the hair is gone, and that's what you can't do with a guarded razor, which is why I like to use this unguarded razor. Those of you interested, we are working with the manufacturer on this blade here. We should have an Elevate Hair brass razor for you guys very soon, hopefully before the summer starts in June. We'll have that in our distribution facility. All right, this is starting to flatten out the shape a little bit better. You can kind of see that. One more section, and I'm going to go to the other side and duplicate this. And again, this is just weight removal. I'm keeping the exact same shape. I'm just taking some extra weight out of it. Next side. Amber, how long have we been on live for?
Almost an hour.
All right, cool. Perfect. Going through very similar sections, same sections really that I did before. Just going through this spot, I'm taking weight out. All right. So that should be nice and neat. Modern beauty mullet for you guys, and you can see that tipping kind of flatten that shape out. There's the back, nice little bit of layers. And then I'm not going to bore you guys with the styling process, but for some of you, I'll just let you know we're going to start with Speed of Light. This is a new product that makes the hair dry faster. Spray this all over, mid shafts to ends. And I had a little bit of that Nutriplenish, that leave-in conditioner to help. And then I'm gonna go through with my blow dryer and my vest brush, and then we're gonna dry this nice and neat and straight. And then once I'm finished, I will go through and I will texturize with my dry cutting shears. So that's where we're at. I'm gonna leave you guys so we can do the dry later. And I'll take a little picture of our mannequin when we're done. We'll post it on the Neil Facebook page for you. Before I sign off, I just want to open up to any questions, last minute questions of what we did today. All right, we'll go to Neil's page on Facebook. Check out our Neil Education page. We've got a lot of classes coming up. We're going to be here every day this week at 3 o'clock for you, so tune in. Just want to send you guys all the love out there from Neil and from Elevate, and we'll see you tomorrow.